It is a profound injustice. It is literally a matter of life and death. And now, the world must act. We cannot leave people behind.
Eradicate poverty and inequality, promote economic growth and prosperity, protect ecosystems, and guarantee peace and justice throughout the world. This is what Agenda 2030 promises, a project adopted by all the countries around the world, in which millions have been invested to achieve 17 objectives such as ending hunger and poverty, promoting gender equality, peace, and climate change. But are we going in the right direction to achieve these goals? What have we achieved? Well, if you have been aware of a thing that happened in the world, maybe you could say we have made little or no progress. In the past few years, we had a few problems that we can say have frustrated and delayed the path to a better world. First, in 2020, we have an epidemic that results in the loss of millions, but also significant damage to global economy. Then the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 that have claimed the life of almost 500,000 of people to this day, according to recent estimates. Later, another war in Middle East that maybe you can guess who the contenders were. A war that until this day hasn't seen the dawn of peace. But this is further for another day. Getting back to the subject. Eradicate poverty, the root of all evil. By 2030, eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere. Currently measure of people living on less than $125 a day. We can say that the main problem of a country lies in its poverty rate, a factor that can conclude in violence, robbery, hunger, and low life expectancy. Poverty is a burden for society and its development. That's why Agenda 2030 is focused on reducing extreme poverty from 8% to 4%. In terms of population, 300 million of people will be lifted out of poverty, between children, women, and men. A complex and extensive issue that brings with it a big social effort, accompanied by political action to achieve it. Now we need to know what policies are needed to solve poverty. Agenda 2030 is clear. Approve laws that support the most vulnerable people. Laws that secure healthy growth of children in terms of nutrition, health, education, care services, and prevent the child labor. In addition, maternity protection, ensuring access to quality healthcare, social protection for persons with disabilities, old age pensions, and unemployment benefits protections. And if that wasn't enough, we have to pay a salary to people who don't work. Of course, that all of this aid comes in form of taxes, money that in the end have to pass through a government institution, to then be redistributed by the same institutions. And of course, all this money arrives without loss to all the people who need it. We have to trust that the state will guarantee that all this money will be for the social welfare and the future of the generations to come. The perfect solution for imperfect systems. The agenda proposes that the state has to solve poverty distributing wealth, thus giving in the process more and more power to the state that will be in charge of stimulating development and granting aid, not by cutting taxes or decreasing bureaucracy, but by doing the opposite, increasing the size of a state. Procedures that in many cases harm the economic growth of a country. Restrictions such as rejecting and renouncing nuclear energy in countries like Germany and Spain. Completely abandon the world's cleanest and most efficient energy source, all for a bunch of hysterical ecologists. If the plan for sustainable development is to give more power to the state, then maybe have to see countries like Spain where companies and freelancers are affected by progressive taxes, a measure that throws away the incentive of any investor that is earn money. And then when a crisis arrives, the state does nothing to help their people. leaving the responsibility in the hands of the people to help each other. And not only that, another country few hundred miles away arrive with rescue groups first. Similarly, we see countries like Argentina where the government approve policies like price and production regulations, which lead the country to an infant monthly inflation rate of 25%, along with supply problems, and others who turn a blind eye to the problems happening in their country, and blame external agents for their poor administration. The Agenda 2030 is the proposal that aims to eradicate poverty, raising taxes, regulating prices, and giving money to any person. And I ask you, where will this lead us? Peace, justice, and equality. And if a plan to eradicate poverty by applying empirically useless policies is not enough, also we want to live in an harmonious world, where all are equal before the law, where there's no discrimination, where armed violence is eradicated, and last but not least, where gender inequality is eradicated. Again, if our actions to eliminate inequality are allowing any person to enter our borders regardless of whether they have committed a crime or not, people who in many cases are unable to adapt to our country and the culture that welcomes them, resulting in many of these people being unable to distinguish between good and bad. And more later come the waves of violence, while politicians turn a blind eye when the person who they swore to protect as a victim of society commits a crime. And when someone tries to punish them by reporting to authorities or making the cases known, they're quickly ignored by the same authorities, as happened in London, where more than 30 years of violence were covered up, during which politicians didn't dare to speak out these episodes, for fear of disrupting their political agenda. Then, what kind of equality society are we creating? One where some are allowed to abuse the law simply because they're a minority? What excuse will you use? Will you say that they simply need to be reintegrated into society and then just need time for it? Or will you say that we must not interfere in their culture? What's your point with this? Over many years, we have seen hundreds and hundreds of collectivist movements whose voices were raised demanding equality, when all they've achieved are privileges. Their efforts to achieve equality have only resulted in the polarization of society, pitting women against men. Feminists demanding privileges with what they call empowerment, a fight against this patriarchy. Women focus on fight against gender inequality, ignoring the place where truly persist these problems. Furthermore, they have reached the point of disregarding the presumption of innocence, putting anyone accused of harassment into preventive detention, turning all of this into a witch hunt. After all, this is how we want the international laws that guarantee justice and equality for all the people in the world, knowing that today there are countries with expansionist ideological purposes whose rules go directly against a universal declaration of human rights, and today they continue to rule with an iron fist. What will the United Nations do? What will they do with all the countries that govern above the will of their people? They propose international laws that they are not even interested in complying with. The governors of these countries are the same who publicly defend the Agenda 2030 while behind the curtain they subjugate and scourge their people. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the topic that has sustained the political agenda during the 21st century, and the future of laws and restrictions. Climate change was the shot that blew out the sky and which they took advantage of. With leftist agendas sowing hysteria about the end of the world, they speak about irreversible changes and demand action to save this decadent world. In fact, the world has been undergoing changes. But are they happening too fast for all this concern? How can we stop this crisis? This issue is complicated to address. It's not just about stopping the use of fossil fuels as fast as overnight. But of course, to achieve this goal, we have to go through a transition from hydrocarbon to renewable energy. But one thing that we can do is sacrifice the development and economic stability of a country at the expense of environmental laws. We save the world or ourselves. Of course, that with the correct policies we can achieve this goal. A great example of this is France with all the bad that it has, producing 70% of its energy thanks to nuclear power, replacing hydrocarbon and gas as the main energy sources. But then looking at the opposite side, we have Germany, which in 2023 closed its last nuclear plant, leaving it dependent on fossil fuels by more than 70% of its energy production. On one hand, we want development, but on the other, we deny logical alternatives, such as nuclear energy, the most reliable source of energy after fossil fuels, which provides a constant flow of energy compared to renewable energy, which is totally dependent on how the day dawns, whether there's wine or not, whether there's sun or not. This video was a brief review of the Sustainable Development Objectives. A quick look at the policies that have ruled the world for most of the past decade and this one. These goals are simply nothing more than simplistic proposals that aim to solve the world applying laws through cooperative agreements. A bunch of proposals given by a group of rulers who are locked in a bubble of power. These people have sold us authoritarian laws with the excuse that it will be for the good of this world, to achieve peace and social equality. But these laws have been no more than another leftist speech that has caused more problems than it intends to solve. Like the policies that have ruled Europe for many years, that have brought with them violence, segregation, and discrimination. Besides the reputation of a nuclear energy. It seems like this agenda is nothing more than another way to get more votes. A project make more for their interest than for the people that they say to help.